Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Thursday, and welcome back to our series Witch Life. Through the month of April, we're going to be talking about the eyes of a witch, and this week we will be focusing on opening them up, both literally and figuratively. Before I began studying the craft and investigating paganism in a serious way, I could sense that there were energies that operated in the world in ways that I couldn't see or readily define. But it wasn't until after I started my research that I began to realize just how multi-layered and multi-dimensional everything really is. That realization was the beginning of opening up my eyes and understanding that I'd only scratched the surface of all that is, and that there was much more to discover and explore. For example, and this is a very simple example just to make the point, an apple. It's much more than its physical characteristics and its parameters. It has symbolic meaning, as we learn from pagan mythos. It has magical properties that we can tap into, direct, and use. But I didn't realize this until I learned how to see the way a witch does. This required that I open my mind to a universe of possibilities and allow myself to look for those possibilities. Now, how's this done? Regular meditation is very helpful for opening our eyes in this magical context, and the reason being is that meditation teaches us to create a sense of quiet within ourselves and how to set aside the daily hustle and bustle that our physical senses constantly pick up on, react to, and tell the rest of our brain all about. But once that noise is gone, or at least diminished, it's much easier to hear our intuitive senses and to allow them to detect and relay information to us in a way that our physical senses do not. But meditation is not the only method to achieve this. Nature walks, hiking, that can clear the rubbish from our minds and open up our senses. Journaling, especially if we're doing it in a stream of consciousness manner, that gets all the excess junk out and it leaves us open. Even mundane activities, tidying up, doing the dishes, weeding the garden, all of this removes distractions that would otherwise occupy our minds and attention. Exercise can be helpful in achieving a more relaxed state of mind, and these are just ideas to help you get started. The idea is to rid yourself of internal chitter-chatter, at least for a period of time, and to make room for your intuitive senses to passively observe and then report back. So experiment with different methods to achieve this. Find out what works for you. Now, once we learn to expand our vision to encompass this more spiritual and magical vision, processing the tsunami of impressions that we get from this can be extremely challenging. It isn't merely a question of us learning to detect more. The task is to understand how it all fits together, to make sense of it, and then learn how to use the information. I don't care how much of a magical prodigy someone is, this is not an easy thing to do. And honestly, the more gifted someone is, probably the more that person will have to contend with. Having a lot more talent isn't always an asset, I hate to tell you. So witch self-care is going to be an absolute necessity if we intend to continue on with this and we expect to be able to function. Emphasis on the being able to function part of that statement. A lot of people do it and they go stark raving mad, and we can see the results all over social media. So definitely take this part of taking care of yourself very seriously. At this point, if you weren't meditating before, you would be very well advised to start now. When your witchy eyes are open, especially if you struggle with raising your shields when you need to, all of the energy you're taking in can get stuck in your system. So if you learn how to take it in, but then also learn how to allow it to flow out, that is going to be a huge sanity saver. And this begins with identifying what energy is yours and what's coming in through external sources. That may sound easy enough. However, we don't always learn to differentiate this in a conscious way, and that's really what we're trying to do here. We're trying to be consciously aware of the difference so we can react accordingly. And if you have followed along with my Wicca 101 classes, one of the early exercises I suggested was forming an energy ball, tossing it between your hands so you could feel which hand was pushing more and which hand was trying to absorb more. Another exercise involves sitting on the ground and taking in energy with your receptive hand, allowing it to flow through your body, and then pushing it back out through your projective hand into the ground. These exercises serve the dual purpose of learning, in a very simple way, how to detect and move energy around, at least a little bit. It familiarizes you with the process. And it also helps make you aware of how your internal energies actually feel different from external energies that you absorb. And over time, the difference becomes easier to recognize. Another benefit is that this will teach you how to push energy out of yourself intentionally. And this is necessary to do when the goal is to release energy so it doesn't take up residence in your system. It's also going to come in handy for you when you are doing your spells, because you build up all this energy to put it into the spell, but if you don't know how to unleash it, you've got yourself a little bit of a problem there. Now, the exercise in which you're absorbing energy directly from the earth, letting it go through you, and then sending it back into the earth, this also doubles as a kind of energy cleansing. The earth energy is a purifying and a grounding force, and when performed properly, this can do wonders for your nerves. So at this point, we've learned how to open our eyes and how to discard unwanted or extraneous information. That still leaves us with the mountain of information that's going to be useful to us that we need to integrate with the information that our physical senses already convey. In some cases, it's relatively easy because our intuition is going to naturally want to take the information to the appropriate file folder in our brains, and this once it's there, it provides nuance to what we already perceive, and it just becomes part of the greater whole. But sometimes we just have a feeling, and it just sits in our minds. Sometimes it will sit there for years, not exaggerating, and then one day it finally connects with something else we've learned or observed, and then it will fall into place. So if you have this experience, please don't worry. It's all part of the process. After we learn how to see and we get a handle on dealing with that massive increase in information, the next step naturally is, what do we do with all of this? None of the skills that we are expected to learn in the craft are just vanity projects, just to do them to see if we can. Witchcraft and paganism are all about practicality. The magical and the mundane are interwoven. They are inseparable. So it's never enough to just know something. You have to use it. Hopefully, our increased powers of perception lead us to acting with greater wisdom. Witchcraft is the craft of the wise, but we aren't automatically granted wisdom just because we are studying the craft. It has to be earned, it has to be cultivated, and this is going to involve bruises along the way. The pursuit of wisdom is really the primary task of a witch. That's why a practitioner is incomplete without it. You can read all the books, memorize all the correspondences, learn to cast spells, how to use divination tools. You can interpret dreams, you can speak to the dead, meditate with animal spirits, utilize the energy of herbs and crystals. But without wisdom, all that knowledge and all those skills will only get us so far, and it doesn't get you as far as what you might think. We have to cultivate that wisdom. And this brings us to another aspect of opening our eyes in the magical and spiritual sense, and it's to look within and to learn to be truly honest with ourselves. What do we seek to accomplish? Do we have actual goals, or are we just drifting through life? Are we so distracted by our studies that we forget to actually practice what we learn? Or are we so obsessed with the doing that we've lost sight of the larger issues and what this is all for and the philosophy behind it? What is the state of our conscience? What's the true condition of our relationship with our gods? Do we understand our own accountability for our deeds? Are we asking ourselves, what is wisdom? Do we examine our actions and reflect on whether or not those deeds reflect wisdom in any sense of the term? Now, don't be afraid. This is not about beating ourselves up, and it's not about trying to assign ourselves penance for real or imagined shortcomings. It's about honesty. It's about having our eyes opened to where we actually are. Without being able to accurately assess this, we won't be successful in charting our course forward. In order to go somewhere, you have to have your point of origin fixed in your mind. So don't be afraid to open up your witchy eyes. Don't be afraid of seeing the truth, and don't be afraid to acknowledge reality. It's the only place to start. So I hope, if you have not already done this, this will have inspired you to do so. Next week in this series, we're going to be talking about Witch Life, the Eyes, and quiet observation. So I hope you will come back for that discussion. In the meantime, let me know what you think, either in the comments section below, or you can come see us on Discord at Blackbird's Brew. As always, there is a link to join in the description box below, along with links to all my other social media where I post contact and where you can get in touch with me if you're wanting to have a one-on-one discussion. So in the meantime, I guess that's it for now, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.